So I'm presenting you to Nicky Millar. She oversees all the work done on behalf of individuals through the region, developing long-term case files and coordinating rapid response mobilization. Nicky's work touches on some of the gravest human rights abuses through the eyes of the individuals directly affected. Prior to moving to Hong Kong to take this role in 2016, Nicky worked at Greenpeace New Zealand and was involved in both their domestic and international campaigns. So she's gonna share her extensive experience with you all and talk about the human rights work that she has been leading in the region. So, welcome, Nicky.
Thanks, David. I'm just popping in to show that robot Wi-Fi is not doing great, so I won't have my video on for all, but I just wanted to say hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here, and hopefully I can share some interesting information. So I'm going to stop my video now. And attempt to share my screen. If I can just get a screen from maybe David.
Beautiful, got it.
Okay, fabulous. Thanks, Maggie. Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. As so kindly introduced there, my name is Nicky Millar. I am the Individuals at Risk Campaigner for the Asia Pacific region. I am based in Hong Kong. So joining you here from a gorgeous blue sky day. And yeah, let's begin. So I know a lot of you will know quite a bit about Amnesty International, but just thought I'd spend a couple of slides just kind of getting us all into context. So to begin with, just to flag that a couple of years back, we started this movement, this decentralization model, where a lot of our offices are located outside of London. We used to have the central base being in London, but an initiative to move closer to the ground and be closer to stakeholders, a lot of our regional offices were created. So I'm currently based, as I said, in Hong Kong, which is the East Asia regional office. Within our region, the Asia Pacific, we have a regional office in Bangkok and another regional office in Colombo. So these are the three regional offices, but of course we have incredible country offices, as you can see in the list here from our region, of which one of the most important, of course, is Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we have many offices, and globally we have a presence in 70 countries. So it is a really truly global organization. As most of you will know, that Amnesty International, our founding mantra is that every person to enjoy all the rights enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other international human rights standards. I just bring this up now just to kind of put us in that frame, that all of our work is based on and founded on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As we know, our line is, the better to light a candle than curse the darkness, and there's many ways in which we do this. Most simply, this can be looked at as Amnesty is well known for its cutting-edge research, really comprehensive. It's been a bit of a challenge in 2020, given the restrictions of travel and interactions. We haven't been able to be in country as much as usual, so there's some really innovative, creative ways in which we are doing our research through evidence-based labs, satellite imagery, feedback from individuals on the ground, really exciting stuff. So research can take many forms. That is then used for example, for advocacy and lobbying, for national governments, but also for international UN mechanisms. And then what we're going to be focusing on today is this campaigns in action. So this is through mobilizing the public and Amnesty activists to take action on a particular human rights violation, and in this case for specific individuals at risk. Of course, all of this is all interlinked, and not many or any really happen in isolation, and most of our work is a combination of the three and more. So that just kind of puts us all into context of which I will be speaking. So the question of who am I and what do I do? So I'm a member of a global team. So as I mentioned, my role covers the Asia Pacific. So in our Amnesty geography, that means from Afghanistan to Korea down to New Zealand. So in my humble opinion, I have the most exciting region to cover. But there are 5 me's based across the global regional offices that cover their own regions. So I have colleagues in Nairobi, Beirut, Mexico City, and London. We then have 2 global campaigners as well. So we're a team of 7. And our role is to coordinate the development and delivery of campaigns for specific cases. So I'm super lucky to work with the country experts and help develop and create campaigns for specific individuals. Then I work with our campaigners and activists sections, which is our country offices, sorry, Amnesty terminology, which gets a bit confusing even for me sometimes, and to implement the campaigns and make sure that we have the most effective and ethical and efficient campaigns to make positive human rights change. As David mentioned right in the beginning, this can take the form of long-term campaigning for case files, and I will talk through a couple of examples going forward, along with rapid response work, which is generally takes the form of tools called urgent actions, and that is a tool to mobilize as many people as possible on a super urgent issue that is happening. So oftentimes it is to do with imminent risk of execution or risk of torture or detention. So the issues are very, very varied, and across the country, but across the region even more so. So in summary, I work with across the movement with different colleagues from different expertise, trying to bring about positive human rights change for individuals. Our team also works with our global team for Right for Rights, and we'll get to that towards the end of the presentation. One of the things I really want to focus on here in what my role is this concept of agency. So we really aspire and work towards working with individuals rather than on them. So wherever possible, and unfortunately it's not always possible due to conditions, we try and work with the individual. So direct participation in creating their campaigns. While sometimes it's not possible for the individual to be involved, then hopefully their family or partner organizations can be involved. So who is an individual at risk? We hear this question a lot, and it is a very, very fair question because it is quite a broad term. The Amnesty definition is one that we use for our benchmark. This, as you will read, is actually also pretty vague, but there's a couple of important points and elements to an individual at risk. So first and foremost, while it's called an individual at risk, we also refer to communities or a group of people. So it can be individuals at risk is the operative word. The individuals has been subjected to or is at risk of a human rights abuse. So that draws back to our founding statement of Amnesty International. And where campaign actions can result in a positive change for the individuals concerned. We'll get a bit more into this point a bit later on, where we discussed, how we choose which individuals at risk we can work on. But this is kind of the formulation of the individuals at risk in the Amnesty context. As I said, it is pretty vague, and I do recognize this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through about 4 cases of which we have worked or are working on. These are long-term case files, and just to show you kind of the scope of cases and issues that we work on and how we work on the cases. So the first is Zulaz Manan. He is was an LGBT activist based in Bangladesh. In a horrible event on the 25th of April 2016, him and his colleague were murdered for their LGBT activism. They founded the first LGBT magazine in Bangladesh called Rupan, and for their work they were targeted. We picked up this case in 2017, a year after the murder, as despite overwhelming evidence, no formal charges had been made at that point. Their murder came in the context of a re-emergence of violent attacks by armed extremist groups in the country at that time. So many HRDs, bloggers, journalists were targeted for their opposing views. We actually featured Zulaz's case in the 2017 Right for Rights campaign. And I'm very, very pleased to say that as of May this year, a formal police investigation has been submitted to the courts. While the trials are still pending due to a backlog, it is definitely positive movement in the case. Still a long way to go, but it is good to see that there has been movement. Of course, our calls were for a just investigation into his murder, and we were targeting the president of Bangladesh. You can see in this slide here the various forms that our campaigning took. In the top left, we have a tweet from Stephen Fry, one of many high-profile celebrities to tweet about our campaign and for Zulaz's case, including Samantha Powers from the US agency. The middle photo shows one of the many boxes of solidarity messages that was sent to Zulaz's family during the Right for Rights campaign, sending messages of solidarity. This is a big part of our our individuals at risk work. While first and foremost we are striving to achieve positive human rights change for individuals, we also send messages of solidarity and hope to the individuals or their family members. As you can see in yellow, from Minaz, Zulaz's brother, who had received the messages. They really do mean a lot, and we've got some incredible testimonies from families how important these messages are, and also for individuals themselves when they do receive messages, for example, prisoners of conscience who are spending many, many years behind bars. To have these messages are really important. You can see also on the top right a tweet from Rupan, which was the organization I mentioned founding the magazine, who were also receiving messages of support and how much it means. The bottom right is an event that we hosted in Hong Kong founded by Planet Ally and one of the LGBT groups. The second case is TASHI WANGCHUK. The second case that I'm going to outline is TASHI WANGCHUK. He is based in China, and he is a Tibetan education advocate, human rights defender, and prisoner of conscience. He's been detained since January 2016 after he had an interview with the New York Times about a short documentary, only about 9 minutes, that was released in 2015, called A Tibetan's Journey for Justice. And it tells the story of Tashi's quest to legally challenge the government on the lack of Tibetan language education in schools. And just for this documentary, he was charged with inciting separatism by trying to discredit the Chinese government. It was about 2 years before his case even went to trial, during which time he endured incidences of torture, and he was forbidden from seeing his family. So in 2018, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. So we are calling on the President of China, as this is quite a high escalation case, for his immediate and unconditional release, as he has been detained solely for exercising his human right to freedom of expression. As with a lot of our Tibetan cases, it is really challenging to try and get access to the individual or their family, either for fear of being targeted by the authorities or just lack of access. So providing additional campaign information and photographs and audiovisual materials is very challenging. So we had to get creative. So for one of the examples that we did, we actually launched a postcard campaign where we invited activists to learn a bit of Tibetan, of which TASHI was working so hard, continues to work so hard to promote. So in these cases, when we don't have access to the individual, we might create graphics or creative ways. So we actually asked them to write these messages of hope to TASHI in the detention center once it was able to be confirmed where he was being held. One thing that's interesting to note is that when we send messages of solidarity to the individuals who are held in detention, of course, as I mentioned before, it's an element of solidarity and of hope for the individual, but also it shows the prison and the prison officials that the world is watching, and they are very aware when they receive hundreds, thousands of messages that people are watching, and people will know if something happens to TASHI. The third case is a group case. Just wanted to show you this. It's the Bhima Kuragan from India. They are a group of 11 human rights defenders. They are advocates and lawyers and journalists who have all been charged with essentially inciting violence, allegedly by organizing a public rally that was held in 2017 for a celebration for a group of Dalits, which are formally referred to as the Untouchables, and speaks to the incredibly difficult caste system that is still, unfortunately, in place in India. These 11 human rights defenders are part of a broader crackdown in the country, and have been featured in our global campaign called Brave, which is for our human rights defenders. It is still ongoing. Their first arrest happened in 2018, and the latest, fortunately, was the BK 9, but now it's gone up to the 11 as of 14th of April 2020, when the height of the COVID lockdown in India, 2 more were arrested. It is worth noting that one of the individuals has contracted COVID while in detention. So we actually shifted a lot of our calls, which was obviously for their immediate release, but also for the fair treatment while in detention, and insurance that there's access to medical care. I'm pleased to say that the individual is doing well and remains healthy. Finally, I'm just going to touch on MARINEL UBALDO, who some may remember from last year's Right for Rights campaign. She's from the Philippines, an incredibly inspiring youth climate change activist. She and her family survived Super Typhoon Yolanda in November 2013, where more than 6,000 people died in the Philippines alone and millions lost their homes. To date, the Philippine government has yet to provide sufficient response to a lot of families who continue to live without access to water or shelter. So a lot of our campaign was targeted towards the President of Philippines to ensure that not only that they provide the necessary response care to the individuals affected, but to ensure that in the future they are protected. There's sufficient protection mechanisms in place. Another aspect of the campaign was a more global mobilization towards ensuring that international action takes place. Of course, the likes of the Philippines are on the front lines of climate change and can see the incidences that are happening firsthand. However, as often is the case, they are not. Philippines is not necessarily the major contributors. So a lot of MARINEL's work is in the international sphere, bringing her story of real living through climate change to ensure that governments across the world take action. One exciting development that happened was that at the end of last year, the Philippines Human Rights Commission passed a decision that would be the first in history that carbon polluting countries could be found legally responsible for human rights harms linked to climate change. This was not part of Amnesty International's direct activism, but MARINEL herself had been involved in that and testified in the court hearing. This case is particularly close to me, as I was super fortunate enough to travel to Tacloban and Samar in Philippines to visit MARINEL while we were collecting her testimony and hearing her stories. You can see on the top right, that is her village, of which her family still lives. It was quite stark in that it was still below the flood lines, as there'd been no available recourse there or relocation provided. So unfortunately, as we have seen in the last few weeks, Philippines is still very much in the front lines of these super storms. So it is an ongoing battle of which she is fighting. The bottom left was a super inspiring one of the Fridays for Future movements in Tacloban city. And you can see MARINEL there smiling on the left. It was a really, really powerful moment and showing how the youth are really, really taking charge. Just to show during the Right for Rights campaign how some of our campaign work. The top left is an image of the International Youth Summit. Thousands of delegates from across the world congregated in London when travel was still allowed. They were all there, and MARINEL's case was one of the calls to actions that was happening. The top right, as some of you may have seen or lucky enough to attend, U2's Asia Pacific tour last year, the Joshua Tree tour, features MARINEL's case. And you can see their Bono meeting with our colleagues from Amnesty India in Mumbai. The bottom photo is MARINEL with our office in Italy. MARINEL was invited by our colleagues in Rome to join their campaign events and to attend various meetings with authorities to share her story. So that is just a brief summary of the many cases that we have of individuals at risk. As it stands in the Asia Pacific region, we have 31 long-term case files, and we have issued so far 81 of those urgent actions that I mentioned, the rapid response, of which the campaign period averages about 6 weeks to 8 weeks. As mentioned, it is our rapid response mobilization. So that is kind of an indication of the range of issues that we cover. I'm going to briefly touch on now the question of how do we select which cases to work on. As I mentioned, I cover from Afghanistan to Korea down to New Zealand, and in between there are a couple of billion people, of which many are facing severe hardship. So it is a very, very tough question, an important question of which we try and answer. This is kind of the list of considerations, but I really want to stress that it's non-exhaustive list of considerations that we have when deciding whether to do to work on with an individual. Each case is obviously unique, and we need to consider it as a case-by-case basis. But some of the things we'd be looking at is whether the case is strategic context. So it is, part of a broader, it's emblematic of a broader issue that is happening within the country or region. And our victory or human rights positive change can have a knock-on systemic effect on the issue in the region. This is also coupled with the slide that I did right in the beginning, and that's our research aspect. Of course, when we are campaigning on an individual about a specific human rights violation, if we have existing work or campaigns on the issue, then it provides a lot more assurances of our calls and our broader understanding of the issues and what might make the most strategic campaign possible, and what pressure points and understanding we can take forward. Another consideration, there's an opportunity for impact. So this is a really, really tough one because, for example, with TASHI WANGCHUK's case, which I mentioned, the Tibetan education advocate, it is a really difficult case. He is detained, imprisoned, as I said, for 5 years. Once those verdicts are passed, it can be tricky. But one of our things, while our ultimate call is for his immediate and unconditional release, which we will forever call for, one of the ways that we can see opportunity for impact is for his treatment in detention. As I mentioned before, with those postcards and our letters to the detention centers, is that they know that the world is watching. So while he, unfortunately, with many of these systems in China, individuals essentially disappear into these black prisons of which there's no access for the family members. So by ensuring that we maintain a spotlight on TASHI, there's a accountability to his treatment. The third point there is the enough information. So not only about the information that I mentioned of existing research on the human rights violation of which we're working, but also about the individual, and as I said, kind of the strategic value of added value that Amnesty International can provide. So making sure that we have enough information is really important. And, this continuation of information. So while we collect, kind of the founding details to, for example, create a case file, it's important that we have ongoing access to the information to ensure that we are up to date with what is happening or any development to happen. And then the important aspect of campaigning with or for an individual. And then finally, and the most important, is the aspect of consent. I'm not going to go too detailed because it is a really, really broad topic of which I can, spend an hour or two just dedicated to. But this is really, really core to Amnesty International's individuals at risk work, is to ensure that we have informed consent to not only work on the case, but the ways in which we work on the case is super, super important to ensure that our messaging lies in which the way the individual or their family wants the story told. So that is, in short, the individuals at risk work. It is tough at times, I must admit, working on these cases. As you could see, there's some really difficult issues, but this is just a summary and a photos of the incredible moments when we do see the positive change of the releases of individuals and good news stories. These are real people with real stories, and it's truly inspiring. So this is the individuals with risk work, and I'm going to quickly touch on our flagship Right for Rights campaign now. So this is our, as I mentioned, from our global team. Every year we help coordinate, the Right for Rights campaign, which is Amnesty International's largest global campaign, and to me, in a completely unbiased opinion, the best campaign that we run. It is so inspiring, both in terms of the individuals that we work with, but also the strength and power and incredible passion of our movement. It is essentially what it says on the tin. We write for rights. So it is taking Amnesty International back to basics. We are writing letters to save a life. We have people in more than 170 countries taking action. And we have 10 cases each year that are chosen, 2 from each region. And this has been going for decades now. You can see here, as of last year, we had over 6.5 million actions taken worldwide, which is just absolutely incredible. So when we say actions, this involves letters, tweets, or direct messages to the targets, calling for positive human rights change for the individuals. But this also includes those solidarity messages. So an important element of this work is, of this campaign, is sharing our support to the individuals and their families. So you can see some incredible figures over there, and just a sneak peek of the positive change that we've seen from this campaign. We've had jail sentence reductions, we've had death sentences revoked, and we've had wins of healthcare and many others. I cannot stress enough how exciting this campaign is. You can see here some really exciting, different, innovative ways that this campaign takes action and takes form. On the top left, we have a classroom in Taiwan. Human rights education is such a strong component, and with such incredible stories and individuals that we work with for Right for Rights, it provides a rich basis to teach our youth about the power of human rights. The middle one is from Iceland, and they had this incredible interactive light installation that illustrated the various cases. On the right, we had Amnesty United Kingdom. This is a group in London who did a football match for one of our cases, Yila Xiang, who is a Uyghur who has been detained in Xinjiang detention facilities, and he is super passionate about football. So Amnesty UK decided to host a football competition for him in his honor. At the bottom here is one of my favorites. This is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. This man here decided to dress up as a piece of paper, and he got people to stop on their daily commute and write on him. So they were writing letters on him, of which he posted himself essentially to the individual. So you can just see here, I mean, this is just really a handful of so many exciting, innovative ways that these campaigns have taken form. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to just talk through 3 of the 10 that are being featured this year. We have, this is me, equivalent to me doing jazz hands. We've got these little animations now. Pang Pien Min. So he is a 22-year-old from Myanmar. He is a student, and he is super passionate about Taylor Swift. He has many friends. His dad is a mechanic. He lives in Yangon. He is also a member of the Peacock generation, which performs tangyat, which is a traditional custom that's a performance that is generally done during Myanmar New Year. And it's essentially the equivalent of slam poetry. So they mix prose with satire and with physical movement. So they've been doing this since 2013. However, in April of last year, Phang Pyo Min and some of his other fellow colleagues were arrested after they dressed up as soldiers and were accused of making fun of the military. As a result, after many trials, he has been sentenced to 6 years in prison. So for his performance, his slam poetry performance, he has been sentenced to 6 years in prison. We are therefore calling on Myanmar State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi to immediately release Phang Pyo Min and the other members of the Peacock generation. Second case is Yani Silva, who has dedicated her life to protecting the Amazon. In 2008, she co-founded the Association for the Integral and Sustainable Development of the Amazonian Pearl. She has been at loggerheads in battle with a particular oil company whose license to operate has overlapped within a national reserve of which she has been working so hard to protect. As a result of her activism, she has been followed, she's been intimidated by government officials, and she's even received death threats. We're therefore calling on the President of Colombia to ensure that he protects Yani and all of the members of the organization that she founded, to ensure that they are able to safely defend the national resources that we all, not only them, depend on. The third and final case I'm going to talk through is Idris Khatak from Pakistan. He is a leader, loves gardening. I hear he even has chickens that he enjoys talking to. And according to Talia, his daughter, he is an incredibly passionate cook, enthusiastic cook, but not so great. He is also an expert on enforced disappearances and has been collecting documentation for both Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International over the many years. However, in a cruel twist of fate, on the 13th of November 2019, his car was intercepted on his way back to Islamabad, and he has not been released since. He himself has been a victim of enforced disappearances, and he has been held under the Official Secrets Act, which prevents much knowledge or understanding of the detention that he has been held under. There are fears that he's going to be charged with espionage and tried under a military court. This could result in up to 14 years in prison, or even in rare cases, the death penalty. We are therefore calling on the Pakistan's Prime Minister to release Idris, or if there is credible and admissible evidence, to ensure that he is brought in, has a fair trial before a civilian court. Unfortunately, the tactic of enforced disappearance is often used in Pakistan as a way to silence dissent or any human rights defenders and their work in the country. This is just 3 of the 10 incredible, inspiring cases and hopeful cases that we have for Right for Rights this year. That's the end from me. So I'm going to end there and hand back to David and Maggie to talk you through how you can take action and write a letter and change your life. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Just for you to Thank you so much for your presentation. Really useful to know how works this area of work of Amnesty in the region. If someone have any questions, now it's the moment to ask Nikki. We received one question on the chat from Olivia Bartlett. So what keeps you hopeful and motivated as you continue to work on challenging individuals at risk cases?
Hi, Olivia. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really really good question, and as I mentioned, it can actually be quite challenging. You know, with these cases that come forward, they are real people. You know, we're not talking about big legislative changes or anything like that. Oftentimes dealing directly with the individuals or their family members, getting testimonies from them. So yes, it is challenging. However, that slide that I showed of those releases and the positive human rights change for the individuals, that is exactly what keeps me hopeful and motivated. When we see positive human rights change for individuals, I say without a moment of doubt that it is the most rewarding moment that there is. In between these incredibly powerful, successful moments, other things that keep me motivated is talking with our activists, such as yourself, and learning about the incredibly innovative, creative things that are being done. As I showed in that slide with all the right for rights actions that are happening, I find it so inspiring and so powerful. The strength of a movement and the strength and the passion of our members to work on behalf of someone else. You know, this is, especially 2020, it's been a tough year for everyone. You know, one's hope in humanity can be flayed a little bit. So when we have these moments and to see just how much people care for each other when it comes down to it, yeah, that definitely keeps me motivated and going. So thank you all.
So Nikki, another question we received before the webinar. How do you keep yourself safe and cared for in Hong Kong? It must be quite a tough place to be living in right now. That was the question.
Thanks, Maggie. Yeah, it's definitely been a tough year. You know, beginning of the middle of last year, July. You know, we've been on the front lines, which is something that, relatively speaking, in Hong Kong wasn't always the case. So our work got brought to our doorstep. It was incredibly difficult to try and physically distance and emotionally distance ourselves from the movement. We do have an incredibly strong support system within our office and within the broader Amnesty community, who provided endless support in various forms. Whether it was a quick Zoom chat just to have a cup of tea or online to chat through things, to share, as I said, the incredible mobilization that was being done on behalf of the work that was happening. To keep with the keeping safe, that has come to the forefront in the last few months, given the release of the national security law. There have been many protocols being put into place. We've had consultation with various experts with determining the impact and future outlook of what this law means for the movement in Hong Kong, but also, you know, Amnesty International and fellow human rights organizations. It is a developing situation. It's still new, and it's something that we are pretty tuned into at all times. The emotional toll is definitely there, and it's something that we as a team based here in Hong Kong are really looking after each other, which has been incredible, and just making sure that we are, of course, physically safe, but the emotional safety is also really important, especially for my colleagues who are born and from Hong Kong themselves. This is their home. So yes, thank you for the question. Hopefully that answers it.
Thank you, Nikki. We also had some comments in the chat. Abdullah, we actually have a case of a Saudi woman, Nasima, that we're calling on Saudi authorities to release her. She has been jailed just for her activism for women's rights in the country. We also had other questions and before the event. Have you had any difficulties when visiting other countries because you work with Amnesty? Like, have you been traveling in the region or in other continents and going to missions and maybe having difficulties to get access into some countries?
Yes, yeah, no, that's a really good question. We do. There's certain countries that we call closed countries, of which includes China, Vietnam, that we are not allowed to have presence in. So there is some difficulties in getting access for our researchers and campaigners to get into the country, and that's where it is super important that we are innovative and creative in ways of ensuring that we get the information that we can to support individuals and movements within the countries. So we work a lot with secure platforms such as Signal, or whatever is most useful for the activists. In terms of our travel, we do have an idea of which countries are more hostile to Amnesty and our work, and we would then take, if we're not outright banned from entering, we might take additional precautionary measures, ensuring that, for example, when we go on mission, there's certain protocol to ensure that I send message to my line manager at a certain time on a certain day to ensure that everything is going smoothly. So yes, there is varying levels of acceptance of Amnesty, and we approach our missions and our briefings accordingly.
And we have a question also, Nikki, from Betty Mason Parker in Dunedin. She writes, our group has a Right for Rights stall every year in our library, always sending letters. I notice that there are email addresses and Twitter thingies. Postage is getting very expensive. What's the most effective mode for our letters? We usually send photocopied letters, not handwritten. We want to be effective and welcome your comments. Thanks, Betty.
Oh, thanks, Betty. Maggie, did you say from Dunedin? Because that's brilliant. I went to uni there. So I'm ex-Otago. Yes, yeah. So I was there for 5 years. Great to hear that you have the Right for Rights stall there. Really, really brilliant question, especially given our times of COVID, and not only are our postage expensive, but it's obviously quite delayed globally at the moment. So the unsatisfactorily, this is not the most straightforward answer, as it is quite case specific in what might be the most efficient or effective mode for the letters. I completely appreciate that postage is expensive. So in some cases, our target, so for example, the Prime Minister of Pakistan is quite susceptible to social media influence. So one of the things that we can do is share maybe screenshots or photos of the letters, ensuring that the correct Twitter thingies, Twitter handles and hashtags are used to ensure that the person sees them. Overall, a lot of the time that's trying to coordinate delivery of letters can be quite powerful still. So maybe something that I'm going to speak on behalf of Amnesty Aotearoa, New Zealand, is that to coordinate delivery to the embassies within New Zealand. So, for example, the Pakistan embassy in Wellington is an alternate because, of course, then postage will not need to be international. I'm more than happy to chat about specific cases that you're working on and delivery. and also, of course, defer to the broader campaign plans of Amnesty Aotearoa.
Thank you so much, Nikki, for answering the questions. We don't have much time now. I'm going to introduce you to the website that we have put together for you to take action online, register your events, and other actions. So thank you so much, Nikki, for joining us tonight and sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. Thank you so much. So,
sorry, absolute. Sorry, just an absolute pleasure, and really sorry I can't have my video on. It's been wonderful to virtually chat to you all. Thank you so much, David and Maggie, for hosting me.
Thank you, our pleasure. So I'm gonna share my screen now. So this is the website, it's right.amnesty.org.nz. When you access the website, the first thing you see is some options of how you can engage. So if you click on organize a letter writing event, it sends you to a second page from the same website. And then here you can see the levels of engagement that you can have. For example, you can organize your own event in a venue or at home with your family, friends, colleagues at your workplace. You can also attend at someone else's event. I'm going to show you later a map where you can see all the events that are going to be registered and where are closer to your home. Also, you can write your own letters at home. If you don't want to organize a public event, you can do it at home with your family or flatmates. Or if you just want to be online and take action directly on the website, you can also do that. Here are several links that is going to send you to the correct tabs where you can register your events or take action for all the cases. So you can click here in the tab cases, and you will see all the cases that you can take action, all the information, and you can sign petitions online. You can also download resources. You go to the resources tab. Here you see all the resources available. The Right for Rights leaflet, the letter writing guide, the case posters that has information about the campaign target and the solidarity messages, and other resources that you can download. Also, you can register your events here. You just need to register a profile, and then you can include the event that you're going to organize in the map. If you would like us to send you a Right for Rights pack, you can do it going to the resource tab and clicking here where it's going to send you to a form. And then here you include your details, where we need to send the pack, and what resources you would like to have. We have a standard pack, Right for Rights pack, that includes letter templates, hard copy petitions, solidarity actions templates, and other resources, Amnesty pens, bumper stickers, and other useful resources. For example, this is the leaflet that gives you a brief information of how the campaign works and how you can take action. Also, the case sheet or poster that you can use, that at the back there is a brief of the case with the target for sending the letters that you're going to write, and then how you can show solidarity and send solidarity messages to Gianni, the Colombian case. This is an example of the letters that you can replicate or you can sign and send to us. And this is the hard copy petition that you also will receive. And this is an example of a solidarity action. So all the actions that you take, you can share them on social media and tag Amnesty New Zealand. And also we will appreciate if you can send them by email or post them to us. Cool. Now, do you have any questions for us regarding how you take action or the website that we just show you? Just letting you know, you don't need, if you want to take action on a case, you don't need to do a solidarity action and write a letter and sign a petition. You can choose what type of support you want to do. You can do all of the actions for all the cases or focus on different cases. We are, as a Amnesty New Zealand section, prioritizing the Myanmar case, the Colombian case, the Saudi Arabia case, the Pakistan case, and the Turkish case.
And Logan, just an answer to your question. Yes, we will continue Right for Rights through to January, the end of January next year. However, what we tend to do also, particularly for our youth advocates, and I think maybe you might be one of our youth advocates, we will prioritise cases that we send to our amazing groups at schools and universities at the start of next year. So this isn't the only time to take action on these cases, because we recognise it's poor timing for our university and school groups. So what we can do is ensure that any updates are incorporated if the Right for Rights have contributed some good news to the cases, but that we'll put those out there again for people to continue to take action on. Great. Okay, thanks, Logan.
So I don't see any more questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate that you joined our webinar, and I hope that we can see your events on the website if you are able to make them, or seeing you in some of the Right for Rights events. And thank you so much for joining, and I hope was of your interest the presentation of our Individuals at Risk campaigner Nicky Millar, and me sharing with you the website and resources. Thank you so much.
And just before you go, it's David who's done a huge amount of work. He's going to be supporting you every step of the way, as will I, to make sure that your event really rocks. So please check out the website. We want to double the number of events we host this year, and you're going to be part of that. So we're here to help you. So please get those questions through to us and get those requests and registrations through to us as well. We're here to help and to support you. Okay. Thanks, everybody.